The ocean had always whispered secrets along the shores of Oahu, but in the summer of 1982, it carried something darker, a truth buried beneath its waves, and a silence that would last more than 4 decades. On the morning of July 18, a local fisherman noticed something floating near the coral ridge at Hanauma Bay. What he first thought was driftwood, but as the tide rolled closer, he realized it was human. The woman's body was pale, twisted, her long black hair tangled with seaweed, and a faint trace of rope around her wrists, as if the ocean itself tried to hold on to her. When Honolulu police arrived, the beach was eerily quiet. The tropical breeze carried the scent of salt and hibiscus, but nothing could mask the stench of death. Her name was later revealed to be Leilani Kahoku, a 27-year-old local artist known for her ocean paintings, someone who saw beauty where others saw danger. Her last known sighting was 3 nights earlier, leaving a luau near Waikiki with friends. But no one knew she'd never make it home. Detectives quickly labeled it a possible drowning. Her lungs contained seawater, her body bore few visible injuries, and there was no sign of sexual assault. But something didn't fit. Her friends claimed she was terrified of deep water. Her brother insisted she would never swim at night. And when investigators found traces of foreign fibers under her fingernails, the theory of a simple drowning began to crumble. Within days, the local media had a name for the case, the Mermaid of Hanauma Bay. It was sensational, poetic, and deeply tragic. But behind the headlines, officers found a disturbing clue, a set of tire tracks near the beach, fresh, leading toward a restricted trail. And near them, a piece of red fabric torn from what appeared to be a Hawaiian shirt. The problem? There were no footprints around the area. Only tire marks. It was as if Leilani had vanished inland, then reappeared at sea. The currents couldn't explain it. The tides were too weak. The body placement was too perfect. Her family pushed for answers. Leilani was full of light, her mother told reporters, tears staining her cheeks. She painted the ocean, she didn't die in it. But with no leads, the case went cold, sealed inside a manila folder marked Unsolved, 1982. 4 decades, it sat in storage, collecting dust in the basement of the Honolulu Police Department. That is, until 2022, when a new forensic unit reopened the file under the state's Cold Case Initiative. What they found changed everything. DNA recovered from the rope around Leilani's wrists, once thought to be too degraded, now revealed a partial genetic profile. And that profile matched someone who shouldn't have been anywhere near the island. The deeper the team dug, the stranger it got. The fibers beneath her nails weren't from a local textile, they were traced to a mainland manufacturer used exclusively by US military contractors in the early 80s. And the rope? Not the kind found in fishing boats. It was tactical, nylon, military grade, the kind used in parachute operations. Suddenly, the story of a drowned woman turned into something much darker, a possible cover-up tied to one of the most secretive military bases in the Pacific. But what really happened that night? And why did it take 40 years for the truth to rise from the depths? Because when the investigators followed the DNA trail, they discovered that the man it belonged to had died, in 1984. 2 years after Leilani's body was found. And what they learned next would change the way Hawaii looked at its past forever. The reopened investigation began quietly. Detective Kimo Reyes, one of Hawaii's top cold case specialists, had been reviewing forgotten files for months when he stumbled upon Leilani Kahoku's folder. Something about the handwriting on the old reports caught his eye. It wasn't consistent. Some pages had been rewritten, others replaced entirely. The original coroner's notes were missing, and the autopsy photographs were stored under the wrong file number. That's when Reyes knew, this wasn't just negligence. Someone had wanted this case buried. The DNA match led him to a name, Sergeant Michael D. Holbrook, a U.S. Air Force mechanic stationed at Hickam Air Base during 1982. According to base records, Holbrook was on active duty the week Leilani disappeared. But his personnel file held a strange note, transfer ordered, urgent, undisclosed reason. Within 2 months of her death, Holbrook was reassigned to Alaska. He died 2 years later in what was ruled an accidental training explosion. Reyes reached out to surviving colleagues. Most were reluctant to speak. One retired airman finally did, under anonymity. "We were told to shut up about that girl," he confessed. "Someone from higher up said she drowned. That was it. No questions." Meanwhile, forensic experts re-examined the rope found on Leilani's body. It was a rare parachute cord type, used only by special operations personnel at the time. More chillingly, fragments of the same material were found near a secluded part of the base shoreline, a restricted area less than 2 miles from where Leilani's body surfaced. The pieces were aligning. Leilani's friends had said she was seeing someone secretly, someone she called Mike from the base. They thought he was just a tourist, but her diary told a different story. In her final entries, she wrote about being followed, about phone calls where no one spoke, about the fear of something bad coming. Her last note read, "He said it's dangerous for me to ask questions about his work. I think he's lying about who he really is." That was dated July 14, 3 days before she vanished. Detective Reyes met with Leilani's now elderly mother, who kept her daughter's paintings neatly stacked in the family garage. In one of them, a canvas never displayed publicly, the image showed a woman half submerged in dark blue water, surrounded by red streaks that looked eerily like blood. In the corner, faint but visible, Leilani had painted a man's silhouette in a military uniform. When Reyes turned the painting over, he found words written on the back, "Truth sinks deep." By the following week, the detective obtained permission to search Hickham's archived records. What he found was stunning. There was no record of Holbrook's urgent transfer. Instead, a classified memo labeled "See Operation Incident the 15th of July 82 had been deleted from the base's internal index. The date? The night Leilani disappeared. When confronted, Air Force Public Affairs released a statement saying, "No record exists of any incident involving civilian casualties in July 1982. But Reyes wasn't convinced. He pushed for deeper access, and in doing so, he received an unmarked envelope in his department mailbox one morning. Inside was a single Polaroid, an image of a small military boat docked at night. And standing near the dock was a woman who looked exactly like Leilani, alive. The photo was time-stamped July 16, 1982, 11:27 p.m., nearly 24 hours after she was officially reported missing. The detective was stunned. If the timestamp was real, it meant Leilani didn't drown that night. She was alive, at least for one more day. But the photo raised even more questions. Who took it, and why did someone want him to have it now? Reyes sent the Polaroid for digital enhancement. The results confirmed the woman's identity, 98% match. But in the background, the analysis revealed something else. A vehicle license plate reflected in the boat's metal hull. When traced, it led back to base vehicle number 3315, registered to Sergeant Holbrook. Now, there was no denying it. The man connected to her disappearance was tied to a military operation, and possibly, to her death. Still, there was no murder weapon, no eyewitness, and no confession. Without more evidence, the case would collapse in court. That's when Reyes decided to do something bold, something no one had done before. He contacted the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs and requested access to Holbrook's service-issued locker contents, which had been returned to his family after his death. Among the items was a notebook, pages water-stained and fragile. Most were filled with mechanical notes and maintenance logs. But near the back, scribbled faintly, were the words, "She saw. She wasn't supposed to." And next to it, a rough sketch of the same shoreline where Leilani's body was found. Detective Kimo Reyes barely slept that night. The cryptic note from Holbrook's notebook, "She saw. She wasn't supposed to," looped in his mind like a haunting refrain. What had Leilani seen? What truth was dangerous enough to take her life and bury the evidence for decades? He decided to return to where it all began, the cove near the base, where Leilani's body was discovered. At dawn, the air smelled of salt and rain, the ocean reflecting streaks of orange light. Reyes walked the rocky shore, replaying every detail. The case had been silent for 43 years, yet the waves still whispered the same question, why her? He spotted something new, a small erosion near the rocks, revealing fragments of old fabric and rusted metal beneath layers of sand. He called in the forensic team, who unearthed a partial wreckage piece from a military raft and what appeared to be a rusted chain link, consistent with restraints used in 1980s naval operations. But that wasn't the most shocking discovery. Inside a small waterproof container wedged deep in the sand was a roll of undeveloped film. It was fragile, but intact. The team rushed it to the lab. Hours later, as the images flickered on screen, the room went silent. The photographs showed Holbrook with two other men, one in uniform, one in civilian clothes. In the background, unmistakably, stood Leilani, bound and frightened on the same dock from the Polaroid photo. One frame showed Holbrook looking directly at the camera, mid-gesture, as though arguing with someone off-screen. Another showed the men loading something onto a raft. The final photo, grainy but undeniable, showed the raft drifting away into open water under moonlight. Reyes froze. He knew this was enough to reopen the case under federal jurisdiction. The men in the photo were wearing patches, military insignias, one belonging to a covert intelligence unit that, according to records, didn't officially exist in 1982. The detective superior warned him, "You're walking into classified territory now. They'll shut you down." But Reyes pressed forward. He contacted investigative journalist Alani Perez, who specialized in exposing military corruption. Together, they pieced together what really happened that summer. Leilani had stumbled upon a massive cover-up, an illegal weapons transfer operation being conducted off the coast of Hawaii, masked as joint training exercises. Her boyfriend, Holbrook, was part of the logistics team. He hadn't been a murderer, but he'd been a witness, someone who tried to protect her when she accidentally photographed the operation. According to the film roll and Holbrook's recovered notes, Leilani had seen men in military uniform moving crates labeled as communication equipment that actually contained smuggled chemical agents from a covert foreign exchange. When she confronted Holbrook about it, he panicked and told her to stay quiet, but she'd already written a report and attempted to mail it to a local journalist. The night she died, Holbrook arranged to meet her by the cove to explain. But before she arrived, two men from the same covert unit intercepted her. Witnesses at the time reported seeing headlights and hearing yelling near the docks, but it was dismissed as a lover's quarrel. The killers used the raft to dump her body offshore, later claiming she'd fallen or drowned. Reyes and Alani tracked down the surviving man from those photos, Commander Arthur Dane, now retired and living quietly in rural Oregon. After weeks of legal navigation, they obtained an interview under pretext of a Cold War documentary. When Dane opened the door, he seemed unsurprised. His first words were chillingly calm, "So they finally sent someone." Inside, his home was filled with military memorabilia and newspaper clippings of unsolved mysteries. Reyes played a short clip from the recovered film. Dane's eyes darkened. After a long silence, he said, "You shouldn't have that. But I guess it doesn't matter anymore. It was never supposed to reach her." The truth spilled out in fragmented recollections. Dane confessed that Holbrook had been ordered to retrieve the evidence from Leilani, not harm her. But when she refused to hand it over, another officer, Captain Reynolds, now deceased, took it too far. Dane claimed he tried to stop it, but it was too late. "She wasn't supposed to die," he muttered. "They made it look like an accident. I was told to burn everything, the logs, the photos, even her name." Reyes recorded every word. But before the confession could be formally filed, Dane took his own life 2 days later, leaving behind a single line in his note, "We all paid for that night in different ways." With the confession and photographic evidence, the case was reopened officially. After 4 decades, Leilani's death was ruled a homicide tied to an authorized military activity, and her name was finally cleared. News outlets across Hawaii erupted with the headline, "1982 Cold Case Solved, Naval Cover-Up Exposed." The community that had once called her reckless now gathered to honor her courage. At her memorial, Reyes stood silently beside her sister, who whispered through tears, "She just wanted the truth." He replied softly, "And now, the truth belongs to her." The revelation shook Hawaii, not just because the crime was solved, but because it symbolized justice that transcended time. Documentaries revisited the case, detailing the systemic efforts to bury her story. New declassification orders led to further investigation into similar Cold War operations across the Pacific. Reyes became a voice for long-forgotten victims, using Leilani's case as a rallying cry for reform in how military-related deaths were handled. A scholarship was established in her name for investigative journalism students in Hawaii, dedicated to uncovering hidden truths. But the story didn't end there. Months later, Alani received an anonymous envelope containing a faded military photo, a group of men from the same covert unit. On the back was written, "Hawaii wasn't the only one." The implication was clear: Leilani's death was part of something much larger, a series of suppressed incidents spanning multiple islands and years. Sometimes, mysteries don't die, they wait. They linger in the rusting corners of evidence rooms, in the memories of those who can't forget. Leilani didn't vanish without meaning. She became a symbol of truth's endurance, even when buried under decades of silence. In a quiet scene, the camera pans across her old camera now encased in glass at a Honolulu museum. A small plaque beneath it reads, "The lens that saw too much, and refused to close." Her story reminds us that justice may sleep, but it never dies. Reyes stood on the same shoreline where her story began, waves whispering secrets into the wind. He placed a single orchid where her body had once been found. "Leilani," he murmured, "they finally know." Every mystery leaves behind a voice, and today, we've heard.